What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at SoFi stock, ticker symbol SOFI, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Thursday, May 2nd. All right, guys, SoFi stock here today up 14 cents a share. That's plus 2.06% in regular trading hours. It is up a little bit here in the after hours, up to $7 a share. Listen, as always, guys, take after hours with a bit of a grain of salt, even if it's in your direction. The volume is going to be very low in after hours, so take that with a grain of salt. But let's take a look. A lot of volatility on SoFi here today. Of course, we got this macro kind of pump and then fade that we saw across really the entirety of the whole market. As you know, we got some pumps. It was FOMC day. You know, they left rates unchanged as expected. I think there were very few people who expected otherwise. So that really didn't lead to much volatility in and of itself. However, Powell then came out and said, with more certainty, that their next move is very unlikely to be a hike, which kind of leaves us down the path of cuts. However, after initially pumping the market, that fade, in my opinion, is most likely, and this again was a market-wide fade, is most likely due to the fact that that was already relatively obvious. The Fed likes to work as smooth as they can, and to pull out a hike would have been a bizarre move. So after I think the dust settled, I think the market kind of realized, wait a second, we kind of already knew this. And then you saw some profit taking snowball into a late day sell-off. But let's, take a look at SoFi. This is a SoFi video after all, so let's dive into the stock and pull out as much bias as we can. We'll do a little analysis of the volume profile. We'll take a look at the psychological levels that we all need to be paying close attention to here tomorrow. And then we'll finish out with both the expected move and the directional bias coming out of the chain. So let's start here by taking a look at that volume profile on the 5-minute chart. Listen, by the way, if you guys are new here, SoFi is today's wild card stock. So my goal is to hit 10,000 subscribers. We set a goal of 7, and then you guys blew that away with quite a bit of time to spare. So the new goal is 10 here, shooting a little higher. But listen, I appreciate it, and I'll keep the videos coming. So what we're doing here, guys, is we're looking under the hood. We're peeling back a layer of the onion, right, to look at another source of data. The price action happened. It's done. We know what happened. Looking at that alone for bias would be silly. The bias is already represented on the chart, but we can look under the hood at the volume profile and see, okay, was there bias at all to begin with? If there was, did it support the movement, or did it actually go against the movement? Which is another layer of understanding that I think most people should be aware of. So let's just take a quick look. There's no reason to spend 10 minutes on this. If we look at the open here, we compare that. Of course, we got a lot of volume off the open previously. However, we know, looking here, let's do this, that was the day after earnings. That's not really that out of the ordinary. So if we come back here to the 5-minute, we can see we're back to a more contextual volume off the open, and then we get that fade off the open in terms of volume. Okay, we saw a little pump right off the open, and then we saw that rejection off of 7, and the volume, it popped a little bit on the rejection, but that was a battle bar. You can see that wick on that candle, right? That wick indicates that you had a lot of buyers and sellers battling, which leads to a little bit higher volume, so nothing to be concerned with there in terms of bias. Very normal volume throughout the day. Then we saw volume kind of take off along with the rest of the market. Now, just so you're aware, across, like on SPY, for example, the move itself ended up being kind of a net neutral, whereas, on SoFi, it was slightly a net positive, okay? But the volume profile bias on SPY, there wasn't any really, which I thought was very interesting. Now, in order to look at SoFi's volume here and really understand what's going on, at least form a reasonable opinion, we have to understand that normally we expect to see volume pump into the close, kind of like that teacup shape that we expect, with the right side being about 1/3 to 2/3 the size of the open normally. So if we expect to see on any normal day increasing volume into the close, okay, and we got volume increasing early off of news, but an argument from the bears side is going to be, look at all these consecutive red bars on the fade. But For the bull side, we saw bullish volume hitting early on the front side of that move, earlier than it normally would, and actually almost matching the volume of what we would normally expect to see a higher volume close. Okay, when you look at this contextually and you match this up and you look at the arguments of both sides, the truth is, here on SoFi today, guys, the move itself ended up being slightly positive, slightly net positive when it was all said and done, a little bit higher than where we began. And the volume itself, there's no bias here, okay? So let's move on. Let's take a look at the psychological and self-fulfilling prophecy levels that I'm going to be paying attention to on SoFi here tomorrow. So, good news if you're a bull here today, we reclaimed the 50 period. And we did so off the open, we retested it, and we held it throughout the day before bouncing up off of there off of news. Now, we got help on the news, on the bounce. Not going to deny that. But then we came into 7. We'll talk about 7 on the daily. Right now, we're just worried about what's specific to the 30-minute, which is the 50 period and the 200 period. We reclaimed the 50 and held it. Tomorrow, bulls. Any retest of the 50 period, I want to see that hold and bounce away on high volume. But the ultimate goal, really specific to the 30-minute chart tomorrow, would be a reclaim of the 200 period. It is 4.6% away, so just be aware of that. But best case scenario on the 30-minute chart, if you're a bull here, would be a reclaim of the 200 period tomorrow. Bears, if we were to see a test of the 200 period, intraday, you might already be in a little bit of trouble since that's 4.6% away, but you'd want to see that reject. And the ultimate goal here tomorrow, if you're a bear on the 30-minute, is to crack downside below the 50 period on high volume, see low volume pullback to the retest, and then boom, reject quickly on high volume to not only break, but also break, test, and confirm that 50 period as a short-term resistance. Let's move on here to the 4-hour chart. We can see here that on the 4-hour, these relevant levels are about 4.1% away. It's about 5% to the 200 period, about 4.1% to the 50 period. They're in a similar region as of right now. So that level is a little bit beefed up between 730 and 735. So I'm looking at that area as a potential area of resistance that the bears would want to see hold as resistance, and the bulls would want to see break and hold and turn that resistance into support. Okay. But again, we're looking at a relatively sizable move away. Again, you're looking at about 4% away. But if that were to come into play, that would be the goal for both sides. Okay, it's relatively simple here on the 4-hour chart. So let's move ahead and go to the daily. The daily is the most important, and the story here on SoFi is very, very clear. Okay, in the after hours, we're actually pushing right up against $7 a share. We closed at $6.92. It's not going to show after hours movement here on the daily. That's okay. Tomorrow, guys, tomorrow's the battle of $7 a share, really. All right, bears, do not give up 7 to the upside is your goal. Any test of 7, I don't care if we test it 20 times tomorrow, reject, 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 ideally on more volume than the test. Okay, bulls, crack back above through 7 on big volume, since we're starting from beneath, right? Low volume retest, ideally test it, and then boom, bounce off 7 on higher volume. All right. Implied volatility, it is falling, guys, in the last few days here. That's normal after earnings. That's very expected. But we're heading back down now compared to the last couple of months into the lower region of the last few months. And the lower IV goes, those of you who are holding options that you purchased may experience some IV crush, but it presents some more favorable conditions to purchase new options when IV is low. Let's take a look at the expected move here. The next expiration we have is, of course, May 3rd. That's Friday. The expected move by Friday's close compared to today's closing price is plus or minus 35 cents a share. There's no earnings or anything between now and then, so we can reasonably divide that number by 2, as both kind of trading days are expected equal volatility. There's not really an outsized event on either day. But then after dividing by 2, right now in this market, I'm adding back 50% to that number to make up for the fact that that assumes 2 green days in a row or 2 red days in a row, okay? That gives us about plus or minus 26 cents per share of expected volatility. If you're a little bit newer here, expected move by design, guys, it's a technical term that is pricing the expected volatility that the options traders are literally pricing in to the contracts. By design, there is no directional bias baked into that. But there's one more thing we can do to pull out any directional bias that the market is giving us by taking a look at the actual options volume itself. We had over 300,000 contracts traded today. That's a decent sample size. And look at this, heavy bias, 240,000 calls, 84,000 puts, heavy bullish bias on the overall ratio. And if we break it down by just the short-term speculators in the 0 to 20 delta range, over 82,000 calls and just under 29,000 puts, heavy bullish bias out of the short-term speculators as well. Listen, guys, if you're appreciating the SoFi videos, again, it is today's wildcard stock. I ask you to do one thing, takes half a second, and it's 100% free. Leave a like on the video, and then get out of here and enjoy your day. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.